Alrighty. Welcome back. Pause up preview. We are just about an hour or two away from the FIU Panthers men's basketball team beginning their Conference USA slate against the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. I'm Kevin Barral. As always, joined by my co-host Jonathan Mayer, Jake Gibson, and we're here with a very special guest, the FIU men's basketball SID, Darren. Darren, what's up? We're excited to have you on. I mean, if there's someone that's around this team a lot, it's you. We're very excited to get that insight from you. So what's up?
I appreciate it, guys. I enjoy what Paws Up does, and I'm excited to talk a little FIU hoops, and honestly, just have some fun with the three of you. And like I said, I appreciate what you guys do, and I think there's a lot of value in it. So I'm happy to be here.
Yep. So let's go right into it. FIU currently standing at 5-10 on the season. Obviously, that was most of their non-conference games played. It was a very tough schedule for them. I mean, you look at what they had to start the season off against UCF at UCF. They also have to face off against the ranked University of Miami. So not a very easy schedule, just those two games mixed in with some other pretty good teams, a really good LIU team, which they beat, but it was a pretty close game for the most part. They lost to FGCU, another team that was really good last year. So Darren, just what have you seen from this team thus far through 15 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think the team knew what it was signing itself up for when they scheduled the non-conference slate to be like this, and they were going to take their lumps. I don't think they expected to be 5-10 at this point. Probably a few games better, but there's obviously some games on that schedule that are going to be an uphill climb. And that certainly was the way that it was. But this team has just had a way to kind of maybe keep other teams in the game in moments where they should be maybe able to pull away. But also on the flip side, they've shown a lot of promise in games where, the tail of the tape, or you look at the sheet, whether it's against Miami or some of the games that we played in the Caymans where those teams are kind of supposed to be better. And FIU's been right there with them and been able to hang tough with pretty much, some of the best teams in the country. Other than really the UCF game and the FAU game, there were really no other blowouts this season. And to be honest, that's kind of a testament to the work ethic and just the way this team is. There's moments where they look really, really good. And obviously, we've seen there's been moments where they don't look so good. And I think that's kind of that consistency that the team's looking for with a new opportunity now in conference play.
Jake, let's talk a little bit about some of these players. I mean, Arturo Dean right now, he leads the nation in steals. I mean, you knew what you were getting with Arturo Dean, a guy who could give you a lot on the offense and defensive side of the ball, but defense is where he takes his pride in. Jake, what have you seen from Arturo lately this year? And I mean, guys leading the nation, he can't get better than that.
Yeah, we all knew after last season when he won the Freshman of the Year award that he was going to make a big impact in his second season. His ability to shoot the ball, his ability on both offense and defense was only going to grow, and it's absolutely turning out that way. If you look at the team leaders in almost every single stat, points, rebounds, assists, and of course steals, Arturo Dean tops the charts in all of those. So to say that he is critical to the success that FIU has had is a massive understatement. I will say I did not expect Arturo Dean to be as good as he has been in the steals department specifically. Obviously, he was pretty good at recording steals last season, but to say that he leads the nation is absolutely insane. It's a great story for this FIU team to have someone like him who leads the nation in statistic, a very cool statistic, might I add, in steals. So as weird as the 5-10 record is for FIU, Arturo Dean has been responsible for keeping FIU within the majority of the games. Like most of the games they've lost, they have been close. And you have to thank players like Arturo Dean for keeping them close, not only, again, leading the team in points, but also leading them in steals. He is the man to do all on both offense and defense. And he's absolutely the MVP of the team, in my opinion.
Johnny, Javante Hawkins, this is a guy who was off the bench for FIU to start the season, but these last two games he's been starting. And man, oh man, he's been really good. He kept them in it against Utah Tech, hitting, I believe, 2 3-pointers in there. It was one to tie the game, one to take the lead there. And right now, he currently leads Conference USA in 3-point field goal percentage. So, just your thoughts on Javante Hawkins and what he's brought to the table thus far for FIU.
I mean, yeah, he's the senior leader for this team. I mean, look at it, back-to-back games with 20-plus points. I mean, he's been on a roll. I mean, you think about the Utah Tech game on last Saturday. I mean, he was the reason they went to overtime. He hit off the bank Sports Center top 10. He's been really, really solid, a dependable guy. I think the Panthers need somebody like him who's, he can shoot, and when he's hot, he can make his shots down the stretch. We saw that against Utah Tech. But they need his versatility. He can score, all three levels. But yeah, he's in a good stretch right now, and hopefully you want him to keep that momentum going into conference play. And just somebody that you've needed, and he's been a big spark for the offense so far.
There's a lot of newcomers to this team, Darren. I mean, you have Jaden Lipscomb, you have OKK, you have a lot of guys, George Pridgett Jr. Just what have you liked about the guys that have come into this team for FIU? I mean, you look at someone like Jaden Lipscomb, that guy has been lighting it up for FIU as of late, 3-point menace at this point.
I think, one thing about being a newcomer on a team like FIU is, you're going to get your opportunities. It's not just about the balance that already exists with the team, but it's also about the play style. You aren't going to be able to have somebody out there playing, almost 40 minutes a night in the way that, FIU plays, especially on the defensive end with the pressure style. So it is going to be a rotation. And JB, Coach Ballard, had talked about at the beginning of the season that this was one of the deepest groups that he's had. And I think that's manifested itself throughout the season, some due to injuries where guys have had to be called on maybe before they were going to get their opportunity, but also some due to ability and playing well in practice and showing that they deserve to be on the court, which I think is definitely the case for a guy like Lipscomb. When you make pretty much every shot in practice, you're going to get your chances. And he's certainly delivered on those. He's actually – so Javonte is leading Conference USA because he has enough three-pointers made and attempts, but Jaden is actually leading the team with 44.5% shooting from deep right now. So he's been a huge spark offensively and is a solid defensive player. But yeah, I think FIU kind of prides themselves on being able to play a deep rotation and having some depth both on the offensive and the defensive end. And he's been a guy that stood out. But like you said, OKK and George Pridgett and some of the other guys that have been called on either as newcomers or more often this season have also delivered. I mean, Javonte Hawkins has taken a massive step forward. I think I wasn't around last year, so I kind of wanted to do some looking at what his stats looked like last season and stuff like that. And honestly, his minutes are pretty similar, but he's getting more share of the ball, but he's doubled his scoring output, and he's going to surpass pretty much all of his career high numbers here in the next 2 weeks of the Conference USA season. So again, just a guy that, like you said, Johnny, like he's a vocal leader and somebody that you want on your team, regardless of his ability, but he's a pretty good player. Let's be honest. He's making a case for himself right now, if he stays on this track, to be an all Conference USA type of player.
Yeah.
And then obviously Arturo Dean, his stats and the name speak for themselves. I think the biggest difference in Arturo Dean, the biggest difference in Javonte from last season to this season that I've kind of been able to observe and look into is really just the scoring output, the ability to have more of a share of the basketball, obviously with Denver Jones gone and a little bit of a different makeup. But the biggest difference in Arturo Dean is a lot of the intangible stuff, just a guy that now has been around. He's made his name at FIU, and he knows that it's just as much of his responsibility to lead the team on the court as it is off the court. Him and Javonte are guys that are pushing people in practice and trying to get the best out of everybody, holding people accountable. And I think that sets a huge example, not only when that's your backcourt, but when you have kind of a veteran and then you have an underclassman that are also able to kind of drive those in those two avenues. So those have been just two kind of things that I've noticed that maybe don't, appear on the stat sheet every night.
Yeah. So Jake, you were going to say something?
No, I wanted to agree that the success we've seen from Hawkins has been absolutely insane. He has had some games where he has put up ridiculous numbers. He makes getting 20 points look easy most of the time when he lets that ball fly, man. So just this team just has some absolute monsters when it comes to scoring. They have a lot of players you can rely on in that department. There are, of course, some things that are holding this team back. And I think one of the biggest ones being the turnover situation. Granted, they do a great job at forcing turnovers, but they also commit a lot themselves. Sort of it keeps the games even. It doesn't help them go into FIU's advantage because, again, they're really good at steals and they're really good at forcing the other team to make mistakes. But they make mistakes themselves. And if I had to draw one criticism of this team so far as to why they may be 5-10, I think a lot of it has to go to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's been a focus. I can tell you that limiting the turnovers and improving on the rebounding end have been two of the biggest focuses on that the team has had. I think these non-conference games in which you're playing against legitimate opponents week after week or game after game has certainly helped kind of FIU to show itself what are its flaws with this makeup, and then what can we specifically focus on to try to improve, as opposed to if you're playing kind of a cupcake schedule during the non-conference, it might seem all good and well, and all of a sudden you're 11-5 and you're like, oh, this is going to be a great season. And then you wonder why you finish under 500 in the conference season. And, not saying that it will be a massive turnaround, but I think that those scheduling games like that will help you identify some of those areas. And I think that, the coaching staff has done a great job about seeing and being candid and honest with themselves about like, okay, like we think we're focusing on this, but we're not focusing on it enough because clearly it's not manifesting itself in games. Some of it is a bit due to personnel, but some of it also is, an area where the coaching staff has taken increased focus and ownership over it, which, is something that I appreciate. Sometimes you get coaches that kind of just point fingers and say, if only you would do what I tell you to do, we'd win every game, right? But that's really not how Jeremy Ballard is at all. He'll look internally and say, hey, like, that one was on me, or like, this is something that we can improve together. And I think that connected the level of connectivity that the team still has, regardless of kind of this, what you would call a little bit of a rocky start, is encouraging going forward. It is.
And there's a lot to be encouraged about. I mean, look at that game. There's times FIU this season, and especially the game, they've been really good. FIU may have played some of their best basketball during that Hurricanes game. What really hurt them was that they couldn't miss a shot. I mean, the Canes could not miss a shot. And then you have the points of FAU. They just got absolutely blown out. There's just no other way to say it. They did not play well from start to finish. You could make the case that Jaden Lipscomb played a really good game, but that was a lot of it wasn't garbage time, and FAU already had their guys who probably were going to redshirt. They already had them in there by then, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And I do agree, this is a tough non-con schedule to prepare them for what Conference USA is going to bring up, and I think that's a good way to start. Jake, what have you seen from Conference USA thus far? I mean, I believe New Mexico State already won their first conference game. UTEP's already 0-1, so there's a little bit there. Those are two really good teams as well in the conference. Liberty and Western Kentucky have been really good this season. I believe all of them, both those teams, passed the 10-win marker.
No, you hit the nail on the head. What seems like Liberty and Western Kentucky have shown that they can compete against schools all over the country in their non-conference schedule in some ways more than from what we've seen with FIU. And there's a lot of talent here in Conference USA, and we are going to experience that with Jacksonville State. They're a very well built squad with some very high quality players, and like I mentioned earlier, Arturo Dean almost leads every major stat line. That's not the case with Jacksonville State. They got a player destined for every single position, whether it's rebounds, assists, or points. They got a player that specializes in one of those fields specifically. So there's a lot of well-built rosters in Conference USA, and there's a lot of experience as well with the majority of these rosters, especially the teams that have been in Conference USA for all, not the four newcomers. They have juniors and seniors and grads that highlight the majority of their rosters. So it's a well-built conference. It has some great talent, and obviously we saw how great the talent could be last season when you had FAU, who made it all the way to the Final Four. Of course, they're not here anymore, but still, I think Conference USA is a very solid basketball conference, and it's going to be exciting to get our first taste of that against a very high-quality opponent in Jacksonville State, who you had mentioned, I believe, is 8-7.
We could talk about all the positives of FIU, but Jake, you kind of touched it on a little bit, turnovers. But man, FIU right now is currently at the bottom of the conference in a lot of categories: turnovers, rebounds, overall defense. They're the worst defensive team in the conference, I believe. And they also give up the most shots in the conference. Johnny, what have you noticed from those aspects, and what do you think this team could do better? Obviously, we talk about the pressure that they put on these teams, the full court press. Maybe that's something that they could maybe lay off a little bit off of, because definitely allows teams like Jack State, who we'll touch up on a little bit, because they're a really good shooting team, and that is something that's going to hurt them, especially if they're able to get the ball to the other side of the court with guys still behind there, and that press kind of breaks up for FIU.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing for FIU is they played a very high pace, high tempo offense. And look, there's times where you think about the FGCU game or even the Stetson game where they're able to go on a run and all of a sudden they're leading by 10, 11 points, double digits, but all of a sudden the game gets right close and maybe they fall short. This team plays at levels where they have stretches where they're unstoppable. However, when you play at a high pace, they can go the other way. And we've seen that with some of the games where FIU, they looked like they were about to win games, but kind of fall short. So I think for the Panthers, offensively, defensively, they learned of what they can work on from the non-con slate. I mean, there's a lot of games where you look back and look, we should have beat FGC, we should have beat Stetson. There was games where you look back, but now you go into a portion of conference play where, look, it's a clean slate. Tomorrow's the start of a new era. We talked about it where, only really way FIU can make a dance tournament is if they go all the way and win everything. So you see it 5-10, but just wipe that away. I think for the Panthers is they have a high pace. We want to see what they can adjust and maybe make adjustments in game that maybe can work in favor instead of, paces of plays where it goes the opposite and FIU has a big lead and, it evaporates really quickly.
Yeah, I'm very happy you pointed that out, Johnny, because in the Florida Gulf Coast and Stetson games, of course, both of those at home, by the way, they had relatively solid leads in the second half. With even with minutes to go, they still held on to lead, and both those instances sort of dropped the ball with minutes to spare. So if FIU wants to hang with the rest of Conference USA, they need to play a full 2-half game. They can't dominate the first half and then sort of what's the expression? Piggyback, I guess, in the second half and just let the opponent just creep back into the game, because I don't know, college basketball can really be defined by lengthy runs offensively by both teams. And unfortunately, Stetson and Florida Gulf Coast had their way with 10 to 5 minutes to go in the games. And FIU conveniently went ice cold around those times as well. So they need to play a full 40-minute games against Jacksonville State if they want to keep it close.
Yeah, I mean,
go for it. Go for it.
No. I mean, I'd absolutely agree, with all of that. I think there's a couple things that factor into it. I think the play style certainly does factor into that when you're going to be reliant on scoring easy baskets from forcing turnovers. There's going to be times where you don't get those turnovers. And then, what are you going to do in the half court to be able to, kind of combat that? I also think that, being around the team and being around some of these games, it's kind of felt like the other teams have just made the biggest shots when they have to make them. And somehow, they roll all the way. And I remember there was even I think it might've even been in the first half, but there was even a shot against Utah Tech where it rolls all the way around the rim and it goes in. You have two shots that do the same thing, but they go out. Right. So is that theme apparent? Is it more than just bad luck? Absolutely. But I do think that this team has been a bit snake bitten in certain moments this season, especially in some of those close games. I think Javonte Hawkins had a wide open 3 against Stetson, maybe one of those games that would have tied the game or won the game. I think it was a game tying 3. And it doesn't go down, or it was FGCU and it doesn't go down. And those kind of things where, that was something that I was going to talk about later, but this team this season has 5 wins. They do not have any consecutive victories. And that's kind of one thing that I think could really turn the tide is if you can get yourself going on a little bit of a run. And closing games is a huge focus. As much as I talked about the rebounding and limiting turnovers, I think if you look at the last couple games, that the limiting turnovers has gone better. I think that we only had 9 turnovers against Utah Tech. Which is insane. They had 25 and somehow we, came out on the wrong end. But I think that something with this team is they're still, locked in and engaged with it, but getting on some type of run would certainly I would like to see how that manifests itself, right? You win 2 or 3 games in a row, and then maybe you find something, maybe you have that confidence to be able to close games. You find yourself performing in those little moments where right now, like Jake and Johnny said, we've fallen just short. And I think anybody candidly would say that.
And you can make the case that some of these guys get gassed out. I mean, when you're playing full court press throughout the whole game and you're having to run all the way back to the other side, because some of these guys, at the end of the day, some of these guys are faster. Some of these guys are going to be better than you. You got to get back there, and they're getting gassed out, and you see a slower tempo. And at the same time, I mean, focus has also been a big thing for this FIU team. It kind of feels like when another team gets a big momentum going, FIU is just not able to match that. Or when FIU has momentum for themselves, it gets killed. I mean, you kind of lose it there. I mean, look at the FGCU game. I think they had a lot of momentum going for them. Arturo Dean had the record. They were on a roll, national TV, and all of a sudden, that second half, something clicked and something happened. FGCU got momentum going. FIU was just not able to match that. But and you talk about turnovers. I think against Stetson, they only had 5 turnovers, and then FGCU, I believe it was sort of that same number. So turnovers haven't been an issue, and FIU just hasn't been able to take advantage of, causing these turnovers. They haven't been able to score second chance points off of them. Rebounding, again, has been a huge issue. You bring in a lot of height. You have Seth Pinckney, who, although doesn't play that much, still 7'1", easily the tallest guy on the court. You have John Abar, who I know we'll get to him in a little bit because he's definitely been an on and off case for FIU, and thankfully he's playing and he's going to bring in some depth. But you have Mohamed Sonogo, who just hasn't played too much. He's kind of been in a weird situation there for FIU, and then Okeke, who also has been in a kind of weird situation there. So you're kind of losing a lot of there's a lot of aspects that go into FIU, especially struggling in the second half. And Johnny mentioned Stetson FGCU. Look at Miami; they were leading by 12. They weren't leading into the second half, but right out of the gate, they got it going, and they had a couple of things not go their way, and all momentum kind of went all the way down. So there's a lot to go into there, but I do want to talk about a couple guys off the bench. Jaden Brewer is having himself one hell of a year.
Yeah.
This guy came in last year towards the end of the season. He really got it going, and this year he's either the first or second guy coming off the bench for Jeremy Ballard. Darren, what have been your thoughts on Jay Brew?
I mean, honestly, he's probably even more so than Arturo Dean, the guy that has the most potential on the entire team. He struggles to shoot it a little bit, but I think that's something that could come around for him. But he's just able to contribute in so many different ways. Just from his body type and his athleticism, he's naturally a good defender. He gets in passing lanes. He's kind of a menace, whether it's in the press or in the half court. And then obviously he's really effective in transition, taking the ball to the basket. We've seen what he can do from like an aerial standpoint. He's an incredible dunker, but he's also just really good in taking the ball to the rim. Like I said, the free throw shooting is something that, is something that you can improve as a player, right? Like you can't teach height and you can't teach athleticism, but you can certainly teach some of those skills. And that's something that, he's working on. I firmly believe it'll come with time, but yeah, I mean, Arturo Dean obviously is that good. So maybe that's a little bit of a slight to him, but like Jaden Brewer is a guy that has a ton of potential and is a super valuable, asset to have on a team like this. And I think, you guys also talked about like kind of the situation with, maybe the fatigue and the play style contributing to kind of what's happened here and there. And I wouldn't disagree with that. I just think we also need to acknowledge a lot of these guys are being asked to step up in a very much more significant role this year, whether they're completely newcomers to the team or whether they just didn't get a whole lot of burn last season, right? Even a guy like Javante Hawkins, like he got a lot of minutes. Everybody knows his name, but he certainly wasn't taking that same amount of shots or really, I guess, even playing the same way, if that makes sense. Being the primary scorer when he's on the floor is naturally going to have him more fatigued, right? So I know there's always excuses for everything, but that's not really what I'm saying. I just think that this kind of stuff can manifest itself over the whole season. And you may see that, and we hope that by the end of February or the middle of February and March, starting now with the Conference USA season, that these guys will round into form, getting more minutes, playing more often, understanding what it takes to play the style that FIU plays, and being able to recover and manage their bodies a little bit better too. Like I said, I mean, it's hindsight's 2020, but not having Abar in that game against Utah Tech was in the moment seemed like we were fine, but when you look back at it, it was a big loss just from a rotational guy. Even if he could have given you 15 or 20 minutes, it's somebody to spell, a Mo Sanogo or a Seth Pinckney, who's, again, not used to being out there for more than 15 or 20 minutes, right? We don't, other than Arturo Dean, we don't really have anybody that returned that was playing a bulk of the games last season. Pitar maybe, but he, that kind of has manifested itself as well. So, So, I mean, just a point to make there is that it seems like it's been a long season already, but in reality, it's kind of just starting. And I think they're starting to figure out what works and what doesn't. And by that, I mean the players, the coaching staff, and how to manage and finish some of these games. It's a big focus for the team is how do we finish in the last 4 minutes?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about John Abar. He has missed, I believe, 3 games this season. He now finds himself fully ready to go. He is good to go for the conference slate, hopefully. I know he's been dealing with, I believe, a knee injury, so he's good to go. Let's hear from John Abar. Shout out to Darren for getting us the interview. So we'll play it up here, and then we'll talk a little bit about what John Abar's brought to FIU thus far.
Hi, John. I know obviously last game you were out, and you've just been working on getting healthy, but just talk to us about how you're feeling going into tomorrow's game against Jacksonville State and it being the conference season now.
Well, since it's conference, we're 0-0. We're excited. I'm ready. Man, we've been putting in work, me and my boy Javi, for the past about 2 weeks. All I can say is I'm excited. Man. We're ready to go out there. We've been growing a lot as a team as well, so we're ready to showcase what we can do. And
you're feeling 100% basically ready to go tomorrow?
Ready to go. Cool.
All right, man. You heard it here from John first, all right?
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you. Go get him tomorrow, brother.
Let's go, man.
Yes, sir.
There it is, 100% ready to go. Johnny, what have you liked about Jonathan Abar? Because he's had his good moments. I mean, right when the season got going, the UCF game, and I believe the game following that, Tarleton State, he was really good. But then he's had his moments where it kind of feels like John Abar isn't out there. And just what have been your overall thoughts? I know he's had injuries, which may have played a factor into maybe some of his inconsistencies. But for the most part, this is a guy who I believe a lot of us here have pretty high expectations for him entering this team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a cool story. His father played at FIU, but no, I mean, he's had really explosive games. I think about, Tarleton State early in the first half. I think about the Kennesaw State game, which was probably the best game overall for FIU this year, most complete game. And he was able to really get inside the paint, get in one opportunities and really be dominant inside. That's what FIU wants. Has the ability to shoot beyond the arc. He can get inside the paint, get his own shot going. But I really like Jonathan Abar, and obviously it's been a little inconsistent with him, in and out of the lineup, which kind of maybe affects how the momentum is and how the chemistry can be within the lineup. And that's been a big thing with FIU this year is there hasn't been a consistent starting 5 that we have seen, overall. So I think having Abar and having that rest period, including the break and having 2 weeks off, as you talked about in a little interview, I think it's exciting to have him back. And I think for FIU, having his size and versatility will be key, especially tomorrow or this afternoon against Jacksonville State.
Yep. So the other player I wanted to touch on is George Bridget Jr. Maybe we'll see him throughout more in the conference slate. He's a guy he started off with FIU, who's in the rotation, playing a good amount of minutes. And then after that, he started struggling. A couple practices didn't go his way, and he just didn't start playing a lot. But came in, I believe, in the FAU game. He had over double-digit points, and then since then he's kind of had his moments. He had a really good game, I believe, against LIU. So Darren spoke to Pridgett and just about, because Ballard really mentioned how this is a guy who's been ready. He's staying ready. It's the next man up mentality for him. And he is someone who has a lot of DNPs, probably the most on the team outside of like Onyx and Renato Nunez who've played. But this is someone who, when he's been in the game, he has made an impact, and he certainly did when he played in the last game. And Darren spoke to him a little bit.
George Pridgett here from Jacksonville State before tomorrow's first Conference USA game. Gino, just talk to us about, obviously, like, your role has been different kind of every game, but just talk to us about your mentality on a daily basis and your ability to kind of stay ready when your name's called.
Well, yeah, like you said, just staying ready. I think, JB, he tells us, our depth is our strongest thing, and, just coming out and trying to help us win and impact the game. We got a really good group. We're very deep, and, we're looking forward to this conference season, and, kind of just changing the narrative about us. We know that non-conference part wasn't a reflection of us, and we're looking forward to, showing things in this conference season.
So just talk to me a little bit about the mentality going into the conference season. Obviously, you talked about kind of it's a fresh slate. It's a new year, and I think you know that this team has a lot more potential and has shown it plenty, kind of even during the non-conference season. So talk a little bit about your mentality going into that.
Yeah, so like you said, you know, we're coming in here with a clean slate, but our biggest thing, we're looking to finish games more. Like you said, we play great stretches, but, you know, our biggest thing is finishing and, you know, executing on our mission. And, you know, we got a good group, and we're feeling good about ourselves right now. And, you know, we're really looking forward to this conference run for sure.
Cool. And then just last question for me, Gino. Just kind of how have things been since you got to FIU? You're one of the new players on the team. Obviously adjusting to a new level. And honestly, like we said, when your name's been called, you've delivered really for the Panthers most of the season. So,
well, I would just say, you know, preparing myself and, you know, my teammates just give me confidence and just believing in me and, you know, all that. And, it's just the biggest thing. Oh, I'm sorry, bro. I can't.
It's all good. It's all good. There's some distractions back there, JG.
But no, I mean, just staying loose, staying short-term memory, just staying my confident self, and you know, biggest thing is believing in myself, like you know, perseverance and confidence, is something that I try to live by, and you know, I think that's a reflection on it.
Yeah, really, just kind of trying to take it one day at a time and keeping that positive attitude and being ready when your name's called, and I'm sure your name will be called tomorrow, most of the season too, Gino. So thanks, brother, and good luck tomorrow. All right.
All right,
All right, man.
You
Who
dropped
was
12.
distracting him? Who was distracting?
It was Jaden Grant in the background. I don't know what he was doing because I wasn't able to see,
Yeah.
but something to distract Gino. So yeah, I mean, I know you want to talk about them, like him, but let me just talk a little bit about both players, and then you can kind of talk a little bit about what you've seen out of George. But yeah, I mean, both players have like this intangible quality to them that is infectious when they are able to be on the court and contribute. I think it's a very much a cliche, but coaches talk about when your best players are your best people, then that's what can really drive a team with its culture. And Javante Hawkins is kind of like that, to be honest. And not that Arturo isn't, but you know what I'm saying, more just people that lead not just only by example, but by word of mouth. And that's kind of the way Javante Hawkins is. But for John and Gino, they're just like two of the nicest guys you'll ever encounter. Always willing to be involved in, you know, whatever it is, whether it's projects for AJ's class or actual like media opportunities or whatever it is, they're totally down to do whatever. And they always say yes. You just won't find people like that all that often. Obviously, you know, these aren't NBA players, but they certainly have status. Whether it's at FIU or in general. And some of them, you know, may have an attitude that comes with being somebody that has a lot of eyes on them and a lot of pressure on them. And it can be understood, but those guys are just kind of the people that you would want your friend or your daughter or whatever to hang out with or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like just very good people. And I think as much as they're both skilled basketball players, because of their intangibles and their ability to contribute on the court, they're really what you would call glue guys. And when you have them out there, it makes a difference, not just in the stat sheet and what you see on the court, just overall. And I think that's something that John, you know, candidly, you know, was a struggle for the team. Like we were saying about changing the lineup all the time. Obviously that affects the chemistry and the dynamics, but he's somebody that he hates to watch, right? He doesn't want to be on the bench. And especially when you're losing, it's hard for him to stomach. And I think a lot of this stuff with him managing some of these injuries that he's had is so that he can give 100% when he's out there. And I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like today. And really just in general, as we said, he's a very versatile player. And, you know, the other big men on FIU have a little bit more limited skill set. More of your super athletic dunkers and shot blockers and floor and rim runners, where John can kind of do it in a multitude of ways. Like you said, he can step out and make a three if you need him to. He's got a really good back to the basket game as well. He likes to mix it up, whether that's, you know, in talking to the other team or actually mixing it up in the paint. He's just a person that you really want to have out there. And with FIU's front court options, you know, it's a big loss when you don't have a guy out there more than maybe, you know, you see, all right, he averages like, you know, 8 to 9 points a game and 5 rebounds. Like that doesn't seem like a lot, but he does a lot more than that. And then a guy Pridgett is just another premier shooter that, when you have guys like Lipscomb that come off the bench, and now you have Pridgett that come off the bench, and you have good slashing guards like Arturo Dean and Jay Brew, and then also Javante, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to find open shooters, but you better make those shots, right? So that's what those guys provide. But yeah, I wanted to speak a little bit more to their personalities and how they are as people, and how the more they can be involved, it's just better for the team in so many different ways.
And it goes with all of these guys. All of the guys are great, and obviously, I think all of us have been able to be around them in some capacity this season. You more than all of us, Darren, and I believe you too, Johnny, for a good amount. You're there a lot, so just these are great human beings, all of them and the staff as well. They're all great guys. So the one thing I did want to bring up, which you brought, was the 3-point shooting. That's something Abar does bring to the table that not many bigs in Conference USA do. I mean, you look at right now these big men in Conference USA, they're pretty tall, but for the most part, they can't spread the floor like John does. Obviously, he's not going to hit you. He's not going to have 10, 12 shots a night at the 3-point behind the arc, but he will give you a couple shots here and there. And most of the time, either they will fall in, because that's who John is. I know during that Tarleton State loss, I mean, he hit a good amount of threes, and at least he had a good amount of 3-point shots. He didn't make them all, but I believe he made 2 or 3. And those 2 or 3 obviously could end up being a momentum shifter for our team. And you mentioned you have Hawkins and Pridgett and Lipscomb. Those are guys who are kind of making up for what you're losing right now in Paytar, who's been going through some struggles, behind the arc and overall this season. So it got to the point where he's not even in the starting 5 anymore. So you having Lipscomb, Pridgett, and those guys as a 3-point team, 3-point shooters, guys who could quickly get you going. Those are guys who you need on your team, and it brings more to what you had last season, because this wasn't a team that made too many 3-pointers last season, if I recall. This now FIU right now ranks 5th amongst the conference in 3-point percentage. So definitely a huge boost. They kind of stand right in the middle of where they were last year.
Yeah, and I think, the 3-point shooting has been a focus, and you have the players to do it, so you might as well get them up. And I think also, you talked about like the versatility there, and I think that is one thing that kind of manifests itself in a lot of the players for FIU. Maybe not the front court players, but a lot of the backcourt and the wing players, they kind of do everything well, but they maybe don't do anything like outstanding, if that makes sense. So that's, I think, a part of what those players that are getting more time are starting to be able to gather and do effectively, is understanding their role and playing their role a little bit better, right? A guy like Jaden Brewer, like, he could get any bucket that he wanted when he was playing AAU basketball, not to mention he was playing AAU basketball with guys like Nigel Pack and other really outstanding players, right? So he played for the Indianimals. It's a big AAU team out of Indianapolis, and they, are frequently doing big things in Vegas and winning tournaments and stuff like that. So it's really just a matter of kind of like understanding what your role is. Jay Brew could take a couple bad shots for the Indianimals and it wouldn't really matter, right? But he's starting to develop that game of, okay, here's what I'm really good at, here's what I'm not. I can let myself go in these moments, whether it's in transition or whether it's defending, but when I have a wide open 3 in transition, I'm probably going to pass, like that kind of stuff is stuff that you understand more, not only with yourself as a player as you develop, in my opinion, but also when you're in a new group of players that are getting, whether it's significant minutes or whether it's just new altogether, you kind of have to figure out, okay, where do I fit in this puzzle here? Because if you just want to do everything that you did when you were in high school or in JUCO, it's not going to take you very far. And I think also that's something that, not to hit on him again, but I think that's something that stood out about Denver Jones, is it not? He was able to find a way to not make it all about himself, but at the same time be really effective in understanding his role. So effective that he's at Auburn now, right? And doing something very similar there, right? He's not the premier scorer on the team by any means. He's taking his 8 to 10 shots, maybe even less, and playing outstanding defense and understanding that that's what his role is, and he's embracing it. And I think that's something that the FIU players are, and the guys on this team are starting to understand more and more as the season progresses.
And I like that you mentioned that because you could go back to, I believe it was the Stetson game where Jado had the open 3-pointer, and instead of taking it, he actually passes it to Brew right down the middle, which I believe ended up being an and one. So that's just one of the better examples out there of just kind of passing it up, passing up that one shot you may have throughout the whole game. But at the end of the day, maybe that one shot you may have ends up being that pass. In this case, that definitely turned out to be a big moment in that game, at least. But Jake, take us through a little bit of around FIU athletics. Obviously, we have a lot of events going on this campus.
Yeah, we got quite a bit of stuff going on at FIU right now as we wrap up the fall semester and head into the spring. So let's take a quick look again, keeping it with men's basketball as we talked about 5-10 record taking on Jacksonville State today. After this, they're going to be back home for a 2-game homestand taking on the New Mexico State Aggies on Thursday, January 11th at 7 p.m. And then the UTEP Miners also Saturday, January 13th at 6 p.m. Both of those games can be watched on ESPN Plus. After the UTEP game, they'll head back on the road for a 3-game road trip starting against Liberty on Thursday, January the 18th. Now, moving on to women's basketball, who have a 9-5 record and are actually just making names all over the women's college basketball landscape for how well they're doing. Like we had mentioned in our previous episode of the podcast, they had one of the best months in program history in December. They are also taking on Jacksonville State right now, I should say, at the Ocean Lake Convocation Center. They're going to be going on a 2-game road trip against the same teams as the men's team, New Mexico State and UTEP, on Thursday, January 11th, and Saturday, January 13th. They'll head back home for a 3-game homestand starting up against Liberty on Thursday, January the 18th. So swimming and diving team, this is Johnny's time to shine. I would think they got a 3-1 record. They placed first overall in the recent sprint invite this past Wednesday. 636 points achieved on that Wednesday morning. They will stay home in a couple of weeks to take on the Florida Gulf Coast Eagles on Saturday, January 20th at 11 a.m. Then it's just a whole heap of Florida teams after that, FAU and the University of Miami. So that was your very brief, but hopefully very informative look around FIU athletics. Kevin, you're muted, my guy.
Yeah, I realized when I saw the thing. Yeah. So I think it's time we start previewing Jack State. This is one of the better teams in the conference. I believe they're 8-7, 4-3 at home. FIU, as we all know, 5-10 this season. So, Jake, what stands out about Jack State? This is one of the teams that is one of the better shooting teams in the conference today. I believe are one of the better rebounding teams as well. So definitely does not play to what FIU wants, but this is a new slate, 0-0 for both teams.
So there's something very interesting about Jacksonville State and their offense. They only have one player on their roster that averages over double-digit points in a game, and that is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Kiki Tandy. He averages 18.4 points per game. He is an absolute monster in the paint. He's also a very solid free throw shooter. So FIU's defense is going to have their work cut out for them to try to stop this guy. It feels like pretty much every game he gets whatever amount of points he wants, and then on the defense, you have a guy like Juwan Purdue, who is a very solid, who's very good near the paint when it comes to both offensive and defensive rebounds, and he's their leader in steals. Granted, only 1.3 per game, which compared to Arturo Dean sounds like nothing, but Arturo Dean is like in his own world when it comes to how he gets steals. So this is a like as I had mentioned before. Offensively and defensively, this team is pretty good. They aren't the tallest team in Conference USA, which is something that FIU can, of course, sort of dive into with some of their big players. Aside from that, yeah, it's try to limit Kiki Tani. Granted, that's easier said than done, and they're going to have their work cut out for him there because he can sort of command the rest of his team to do better as a result of how he can feed them the ball, but they usually like to feed him the ball and he does his magic.
Yeah, Tandy actually leads Conference USA in points per game, so he is definitely going to be a big name to stop. Jacksonville State, as I think I mentioned this, they're one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the conference. They're ranked 3rd amongst the conference in 3-point percentage, and then they rank 2nd amongst field goal percentage. So Johnny just This is not something that I want to hear as an FIU fan, but this is one of the better teams that shoots the ball, and FIU's definitely had their struggles stopping that this season at least. Just giving guys open shots. Like at Stetson, for example, they let some dude who had 30 points off of not missing a single 3-pointer. So how do you stop what could be possibly a big shooting night for this Jack State team?
Yeah, I think when you look at how FIU is defended, I think a big reason is the press defensively, making sure that you can full court go all the way, and that's worked at times for FIU. I think you look at it as being able to force those turnovers, and we talked about how good this offense is for Jack State, and how good of a shooting team is. I think if FIU is going to be finding ways to maybe maximize as much as they can to maybe take not the best shot for Jack State. You want to make sure they're not getting open looks, which has been kind of a kryptonite for FIU this year, is giving up those open looks and multiple shots in a possession, which has kind of killed FIU, down the stretch. I think for the Panthers is finding ways to, defensively make some good stops. Obviously, we know they're going to force turnovers. I'll say that I think Arturo Dean has 5+ steals tomorrow. That's an easy get, because he's going to do that no matter what. But I think for FIU is just finding ways to hold possessions up to a limit and not give up those open shots, which has killed the Panthers really in this non-con slate.
Darren, I wanted to ask you, obviously, one of the more controversial things with FIU is the press. The press definitely been hurting them a lot this season, but there's times it looked really good. Look at Utah Tech. That the press worked for them perfectly in the first half of action. They forced a couple turnovers. We saw that at FGCU. What are your thoughts on the press, and do you think maybe now would be the time to ditch it, given that Jack State is such a good shooting team, and there's a lot of good teams in CUSA that shoot the ball very well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of multifaceted, and I'm kind of interested to see, especially in tomorrow's game, how it plays out. Utah Tech was a team that was very high in turnovers, regardless of playing against the press defense or not. So obviously that was going to kind of lend itself to that. I think Jack State is a team that would like to take the air out of the ball and play in the half court. And if that's the case, I don't think that you'll see as much press naturally. The easiest times to set up the press are basically after you make a free throw or after you score. And Jack State has a pretty good defense. So I don't know that FIU will be running off, big runs and scoring the normal like 75 to 80, sometimes 85 points that the Panthers can score. So I'm interested to see how that plays out just with the limited opportunities. I expect tomorrow's game to be more about half-court defense and half-court offense between both teams. To be honest, if it ends up being a track meet, FIU will win. But if it ends up being a grinded out Big Ten basketball style of game, that probably lends itself a little bit more to what Jack State wants to do, and that's how they would like to play. They would like to win this game 65 to 60, 62 to 58. FIU would like to win this game 80 to 75, right? Just taking a team out of what they're comfortable doing and saying, okay, we know how you like to play, but can you play like this? And that's kind of what FIU needs to do. And I totally agree. You talked about second shot opportunities. You've got to be better in the defensive rebounding area to limit those second chance points. But yeah, I do think that these are valid points that you guys make. And to be honest, it's not really hard to see the line there and how linear it is. If you're going to press and they break the press, they're going to end up with open shots. And against teams that knock them down, you're going to be in trouble. But again, it's just kind of one of those things that makes me laugh because like Utah Tech wasn't a good shooting team and they made every shot they took. Right. So granted, when they're open, they're going to make them more, but also it's kind of felt like, when it rains, it pours, or a perfect storm for FIU in some moments. Right. Where it's like, oh, that guy, the guy that made all the 3-pointers in the first half, Goncalves for Utah Tech. He came into the game shooting like, I think he was like 35%, which was good, but averaging like 1 3 per game. Right. And then he goes for 20 in the first half. So my thing with Tandy is he's probably going to get his. If you can limit him to 25 points or less, I think that's a win. I'll be honest. Yeah. I think it's more about the other guys, the rebounding. and using the advantages that you have, which is being able to run in transition and take a team out of its element. It's kind of similar to an NFL team when they want to run the ball, right? Like the Cleveland Browns, like bread and butter's running the ball. If you let them run on you, they're going to control the whole game and they'll win. But if you can get a 14, 21 point lead on them, they're going to have to change what they're doing. And usually it's not going to be as effective. So I think that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for tomorrow is FIU going to be able to play what we're accustomed to seeing, the FIU style, or is it going to be kind of an ugly game that'll lend itself to what Jack State does?
Yeah, and the one thing definitely that stands out is the rebounding department for FIU. They're the worst defensive rebounding team in the conference, but funny enough, they're actually one of the better offensive rebounders in the conference. They're fourth amongst the conference, which is pretty good. But I mean, I think we've made it pretty clear that they're just not able to get second chance opportunity. They're not able to make they're not able to get some momentum off of those second chance opportunities. They're not able to execute them after they get that offensive rebound. I mean, their speed currently has helped as well as the steals per game, and Arturo leading the way. And then you have all these other guys, but you're not able to. If you're not able to make shots off of these turnovers or offensive rebounds, you're gonna have a tough conference slate.
And you think about it too, as we talked about these dynamics where that you're like, oh, FIU's cruising, and then all of a sudden other teams chip away. Oftentimes it's using those second chance opportunities in order to make a run. So you're up by 12 and they hit an open three. And then the next possession, you make a stop, they get an offensive rebound, then they hit another three. Then all of a sudden it's a game again, right? So I think that, and again, is something that's been a focus this week in practice more than it had been before, is blocking out. And I think that manifests itself and why you see FIU do so well on the offensive end, because a lot of the way that they rebound is just crash the glass, use your athleticism, and just go get the ball. But on offense, or when you're rebounding on defense, the shots and where they're going to go and all of that is not as predictable. So if you're just crashing the glass, flying in like what a Jaden Brewer can do, touch the top of the backboard, but if you don't time it perfectly or the shot kicks right instead of left, the other team's going to end up with the ball. So there's definitely been an increased focus on offense, crash the glass the way you would, but on defense, find a man before you find the ball, right? Yeah. And if that means that everybody's blocked out and it's Arturo Dean coming in to scoop up the rebound and run it out in transition, that's exactly what FIU wants anyway, right? But the minute you're crashing the glass defensively like it's an offensive rebound opportunity, it lends itself to a lot of, variety there, and variety not in a good way. And I think that's why you see such a big difference, because you're like, oh, you can offensive rebound, should be a good rebounding team. But the problem is that you're going all out and you're not necessarily blocking out a guy. You're just kind of using your athleticism a little bit more. And that's, again, something that's been a focus. It has been before, but after the Utah Tech game, it's, all week it's been about blocking out. We do like blocking out drill. We're doing blocking out drills, blah, blah, blah. So I'm excited to see how that will manifest itself, knowing that it's increased focus.
All right, Jake, right before we go into, I guess, keys to the game and a little prediction time, how important would it be for FI to win this first game?
Oh, man, winning the first game of your conference, USL State, would give this team so much hype and would give them it would feel very rewarding after dropping that Utah Tech game, how they did. I can only imagine how bad the locker room felt after that game. But, man, to not only get your first conference win immediately under your belt, but to do it on the road as well would be a massive stepping stone for how this team can battle other Conference USA opponents in the future. And it ain't going to be easy, because Jacksonville State has won their last 4 games, including a familiar opponent in Tarleton State, and they've also won their last 2 games at home. So all the momentum in this game is in Jacksonville State's side, at least heading into it. So if they can shut them down immediately in this game and then play the way they want to play, then that is going to be it would absolutely be the biggest victory of the season for FIU.
All right, so we're going to go into some keys to the game, but we're going to get the most important key out of the way. We have Bam Bam, Jeremy Ballard's son, on the mic here, so we're going to get his key to the game for FIU to beat Jack State. And then we'll go real quick, prediction and keys to the game.
Live here from Jacksonville, Alabama, here with Bam Bam Ballard before the first Conference USA game for the Panthers. made a special appearance, got a rousing ovation. Do you always have people clap and cheer for you when you come into a room, or is that always? That's just normal for you?
Yes.
What are you feeling about tomorrow? Talk to me about one key to the game. One key to the game.
Shot a few minutes ago that proves you're gonna win.
You made your shot first time.
FIU is going to win. That is a fact. We are going to win. Using all the energy possible, we are going to win. That's a fact.
So energy and making shots, that's the keys to the game. I mean, that sounds pretty solid. You might have to do the post-game interview too, okay, Bam?
Got it, thank you.
Alrighty, signing off here from Jacksonville, okay?
Damn, bro's got the drip.
He was media. He was the most media savvy interviewer you got.
All right, Jake. What is your key to the game, and what is your prediction?
So I think the biggest key to the game is to rely on your size. You have A-Bar heading back into this game. Line him up with Seth Pinckney and dominate the glass. Get those offensive rebounds to give back to your sniper and Hawkins or some of your other sharpshooters, such as Arturo Dean. And A-Bar, we all know he's going to be raring to get back onto the court and prove himself. So feed him the ball if you really want to. Obviously, you want Hawkins and Dean to get their points, but if you want to make A-Bar the focal point of this game, then by all means go for it.
What's your prediction?
And as far as prediction goes, I think it's going to be a close battle. Unfortunately, I feel like Jacksonville State's going to be a little bit too hot in this game. I'll go a final score of 72-66.
Jack State.
Yeah, Jack State, unfortunately. Sorry.
All right, Johnny. We know FIU is going to win on your end. So what is your key to the game?
Okay. I'll go. Let me do score after. I'll say let it fly. FIU needs to shoot the 3-ball. Javante Hawkins, Jada Lipscomb, they're on a heater. I think they're going to continue it. 12 threes on Saturday. I know that's overtime adding into it, but they really shot the ball well. I think the Panthers will make their threes. I think Jonathan Ibar, who can shoot, he has the range. I think he'll make some good 3 balls in the stretch. And even Arturo Dean, who we always talk about it, he can shoot. He has the opportunity to shoot from the distance. He can. I think he'll have some nice shots. But final score, Panthers win. You already called it. I'll go FIU 82, Jack State 78. A little close, but FIU.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, Darren. What's your key to the game and your prediction?
Key to the game is run, run, run. You have to use your ability in transition to win against a team like this. Making them uncomfortable by not letting them defend in the half court, which is what they're really good at, is going to be the difference. And then all of everything else opens itself up. You get the other team fatigued, you get them frustrated, and you take advantage of that, whether it's forcing turnovers that lead to easy baskets or whether it's just simply the pace of play being too much for them. And I think that's what you need to do, even more so when you're playing against a guy that's arguably the best scorer in Conference USA, right? Making him defend, making him run the floor will also manifest itself in a way that should help FIU. So that's my key, is try to make it a transition game. And a score prediction, I mean, I got to go with the boys, obviously. I'm going to go with, for more reasons than just being a homer, but I'm going to go with FIU 84, Jack State 79.
All right. My key to the game will be limit Kiki Tandy. This guy, if you limit him, you're already making Jack State uncomfortable, as Darren said, because this is the guy that essentially carries them to a win. I want to say carries them, but he is their leading scorer. He is their guy. If they rely on him to get those shots up and then they leave the defensive side to the other guys, then Jack State has found their way to win 4 straight, the last 2 at home. So if you limit him and you limit him to, at least in the first half, if you get him down to a couple points and you close out some of his shots, he's one of the better 3-point shooters as well in the conference, you have yourself possibly a win. But unfortunately, I'm going to go Jake here. I do think Jack State will win it. I mean, FIU struggles in the rebound department, and they really haven't been able to stop that. The press hasn't been able to kind of come to full fruition for FIU. It's had its moments, as we said many times, but I don't think it's going to work against Jack State. And they will win 85-79. So pretty close to Darren, but I just have FIU taking the win. So we're going to wrap it up here just at the hour marker. So Darren, we thank you very much for thank you for coming on. We're going to get you on soon to talk more FIU basketball, FIU athletics in general. We know you love talking FIU. So Thank you for joining us. From Jake, from Johnny, myself, Darren. We'll see you guys all next week. We have a very fun guest. We have a possible basketball player. We won't mention who, but yeah, from all of us, Paws up.
Pause up.